So one of the things you definitely want to do relative to internet marketing is you definitely want to own what's called the industry keyword. Industry keyword. What is that? That's the main word that people are Googling when they're looking to buy a particular product or service. So in chiropractic, what is that? Well, it's chiropractor location. So there's a few variations, but remember, 75% of the people will pick after a referral. 75% of the people will pick a chiropractor based on location. And then the third category is 15 to 20% insurance. So though you have to, that's why it's so important that you know the source of where the patients are coming from, and you're very specific, not general. Like you'd never say to a patient, "How'd you hear about us?" And they say the internet. That's too general. Okay. It may have been a referral and they went to the internet to find your number. So we need to know it, number one, for return on investment. What's working? That's number one, why you need to know. Especially if you're doing pay-per-click, you better definitely interrogate your patient deeper. You go, if you don't mind me asking, what specifically did you do on the internet? Where did you find it? See, that's how I would go deeper, not just, oh, I found you on Google. That's unacceptable. And I always recommend the doctor do it. And it doesn't matter if it's written on your intake form. You always want to do a deep dive and find out very specifically how that patient got to you. And even after I find out, a lot of times I'll say, so you weren't referred by a family member or friend? In other words, I'll make a real clear distinction, and I'm going to make a real clear distinction where they did find me. It's not going to be general. So you got to do a deeper dive. So having said that, the other reason is you need to know your keyword. Well, we already kind of know what the keywords are in the industry, but now it depends on where you're at. See, so if you're in a suburb, a well-defined psychographic suburb, like here, I'm in Fort Lauderdale. It's not too big now. And so people or let's give an example like Dallas. People won't Google Dallas. They'll learn real quick that that's too far away. It's too big and too far away. So if they live in Irving, they'll Google Irving. They won't Google Dallas. Okay. So you definitely, depending on the size of your area, generally, if you're 100,000 or less, you're fine with that word. In other words, people won't have to drive too far to come and see you. But if you're about 150,000 to 250,000 population, usually your city is going to be divided into a north and a south and an east or a west. And what'll divide it is a psychographic barrier, like a river, a railroad track, stuff like that. When it's over 250,000 population, like Dallas, Tampa, Miami, those are too big. And so you don't want to be, that's not the industry keyword you want to know. So if you're in a suburb or you're in a relatively small town, it'll be really easy, to find that out. You're in a small town of 30,000. It is what it is. It's the name of that town. That's what it is. Okay. That's real easy. If you're in a suburb and it's a area of like 100,000 or less, and it's a well-defined name, that's pretty easy. But you need to just confirm all this. The hardest one is if you're in a major metropolitan area and you're not in a well-defined suburb. So I got a friend like that. He's in Arizona and he's not in any of the well-defined Glendale. He's not in any of that. So he had to do a lot of research to see what are people Googling in my area. He needed to find those keywords. So he had to do a lot of research. And that's why we say you need to find out with your patients, continually find out, what is it they're searching for. Same with referrals. You need to know just that so you can thank the people who referred them in. And remember, they go to, remember your patient list, we separate out into the A, B, and C category. And so you'll take them out of the general list and you'll move them into the B list if they've referred at least one person. If they referred two or more, you'll move them into the A list. And that gets to be real important when it comes to marketing, because it's your 20%ers that are going to give you 80% of the referrals. So when I do any type of internal house marketing and promotion, I'm going to make darn sure that I'm focusing on those 20%, because that's where I'm going to get the majority of the referrals. Well, you need to know that. So that's the other reason you need to know the source of the patient, not just to thank them, but they need to move into a higher category list. You know, that's, I say this all the time. You think when people, charity organizations are asking for money, you think they get lists of people who have never donated before? They don't even fool with that list. They fool with the people who've already given and have given recently. That's the list they want, because that's the highest probability. And it's the same with you. It's the people who've referred, the A, if you referred two or more people and more recent, that's where you're going to have the highest probability of getting business. And especially if it's an active patient. That's like when we do monthly in office promotions, that's the highest target market probability for a referral. No, bingo, you know. Active patients are always better than inactive. In other words, you're seeing them. So the highest is going to be the piece, somebody who's referred two or more patients and they're active. They're at least being seen once a week, twice a week, 3 times. So that's active. And then the next one is the person who's referred at least one and they're active. That's where you're going to get the majority of your, and see, they're present and they've already shown they know, like, and trust you, et cetera. So see, that's where you're going to get the majority of referrals anytime you do a promotion. And if you don't know that and you're not focusing on that, you'll just lose out on it. So anyway, having said that, when you go to the internet, that's why you need to know these keywords. And let's take a look at the internet marketing we're talking about. There's 3 categories of the internet marketing. There's actually 4 if you're selling a product, but chiropractors aren't selling a product. So we're not going to worry about shopping, okay? So we're talking about services. So there's 3 areas of the internet that you want to dominate. That's, you know, there's 3, and that's what you do want to do. When it comes to the internet, there's all kinds of things you can do. But there's 3 things you definitely want to do, because that's where the high probability business is. Otherwise, it kind of gets off in the fringes. So when you take a look at the internet, so that's the first thing you do is you go, okay, well, what's my industry keyword? Okay, now this is definitely what you want to do. And even with pay-per-click. So it doesn't matter if you do pay-per-click for anything else, you know, back pain, neck pain, whatever, but you definitely want to do it for the industry keyword, because that's a new patient. That's why. So most of the time that industry keyword is chiropractor. Like here it'd be chiropractors, Fort Lauderdale. In other words, if I'm in Fort Lauderdale and I'm looking for a dentist, I'm going to put dentist in Fort Lauderdale. See, that's the keyword I'm going to put. Well, that's what patients will do. They'll put chiropractors in Fort Lauderdale. It could be a slight variation. So it would be chiropractors in, and remember, words matter. Remember, words matter. Okay. So, you know, in or conjunctions, or, you know, every little syllable and word, a plural versus singular, it matters. One word versus 2 words combined, it matters relative to the internet and SEO. Okay. So usually the variations when you have that are like here, it's chiropractors. I'm going to do plural and singular, and chiropractic. So I'm going to do chiropractic, chiropractor, chiropractors. So those would be 3 for the chiropractic. And then I have in, and then I'd also not have in. And then here would be Fort Lauderdale. Well, here, see, I got Fort. Well, some people spell it FT, Lauderdale. Some people spell it FORT. I'm including both. See, chiropractor, chiropractic, chiropractors in Fort FT Lauderdale. Okay, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Okay, especially if you generally speaking, Google will know it because it has the IP address, so it knows where you're at, even if there's a Fort Lauderdale on the West Coast. But you always want to include your state also, and you only need to include the first 2 letters, like Florida would be FL, especially when it's paired with the city. Google will know when it's the city FL they'll know it's Fort Lauderdale, not the Fort Lauderdale in California. Okay. All right. So just be aware of that. And chances are, the name of your city is somewhere else in the United States. All right. So having said that, those are the most common industry keywords right there. Now, another word you might want to consider adding is review. A lot of people will look for reviews when they make a decision. Remember, that's the number one reason people will pick is trust. So you might want to include review, like chiropractors, review Fort Lauderdale. And same thing, I'm going to use chiropractic, chiropractor, chiropractors. I'm going to use all three, those keywords. And chiropractic review. And then same thing with the city. Chiropractic review city. Chiropractic, or the city, Fort Lauderdale chiropractic reviews. See? Okay, so hopefully you get the idea. That's the gold word right there. That's the industry words or variations. So that's about what, 3, 4, 5 roughly. So yours are going to be somewhat similar if you're in a named city. You'll just change out the name of the city is what you'll do. Okay, so when you do that, let's go ahead and take a look at what we're dealing with, because we're going to do both. We're going to go into marketing for all three categories. Now this, when you go, okay, well, where's this at relative to new patients? Well, remember the very first place new patients go when they're looking to go to a chiropractor is a referral. So they'll ask a family member or friend. That's why the very first marketing you do is to your existing patients. That's why you should be emailing your existing patients a minimum of once a week. Now, we're going to cover that separately. We covered separately what to say and all that stuff. But that's why that should be at least once, because they're in a circle of influence. Your patients are in a circle of influence of 7. 8% of those people are going to be looking for a chiropractor within a year, and 2% of them are in auto accidents every year. You just need to be in front of them with all the gateways regularly and routinely, and they have re-exacerbations. That's the very first thing, the very first place patients go. And so that's the very first place your marketing should go, okay? Number 2 is they'll Google their insurance company. That's why we do all those insurance videos. And then number 3 is they'll Google, that's called Google Maps. And that's what we're talking about now, Google Maps. So let's go into what it looks like. And what you want to do with internet marketing is you want to be, the goal is to be number 1 in all 3 categories: pay-per-click, Google Maps, organic section. That's the internet goal for your industry keyword. Now, the organic section doesn't cost any money. Now, and by the way, they all work differently. You got to know how each one of them works. So generally speaking, the organic section's at the bottom. That's SEO driven, search engine optimization driven. And it's high video driven because people will click on a video before they'll click on a link to a website, especially if it's titled correctly, like chiropractor in Fort Lauderdale. In other words, the word I put in is the title of the video, I'm clicking on it, okay? Now, if that video says Acme Healthcare, it's meaningless to me. That's why having your name is the single most important, the chiropractic word in your name is the single most greatest marketing thing, and location is number 2. That's the top 1 and 2 marketing things that you do is have it in your name and your domain name. That's why. So you go to the organic section. So we cover that, and we're going to go into that in even great detail. Then there's the Google Maps. Well, that works differently. And so you got to know the basics of that. All of them take knowledge, but Google Maps generally doesn't cost any money. But I will tell you, to do it right, man, it's almost worth having. After we cover it, you'll see, you pay attention to all these details. You go, oh, do I really want to pay attention to all those details? Because it's not just getting reviews. Reviews are only about 23%, 25% of that category. So, and again, all this depends on your competition. It's not like you do a certain amount. Well, if your competition, your geographic radius of draw, say is like 5 miles, whatever, and nobody's doing anything, then it's not going to take much for you to go to the top. But if your competition is like really stiff doing these things, it takes a lot more effort. That's how it works. It's based on competition. It's not based on a minimum amount. So we go to Google Maps. After we cover it, you may want to strongly consider hiring somebody who specializes in Google Local for Business. It's called Google for Business. They change it all the time, from Google Maps, Google Local. Now it's called Google for Business. But you might want to strongly consider, if you're in a highly competitive area, that, and again, it depends on the cost and all that, that you actually hire somebody that specializes in Google for Business and specializes in chiropractic. That's one of the things you don't want to do, is get involved with a marketing company that's doing everything. That's the person that knows the least about what you're doing. So you always want to get involved with somebody that's all they deal with. That's like me. I don't deal with anybody else. It's all chiropractic, and I know it inside out. I know it 100 times more, 1,000 times more than any marketing agency, because I'm a chiropractor, but I'm also in it, and that's all I do. So there's a huge difference in that alone. I won't even deal with anybody that's dealing in other businesses. That's chiropractic, period. And then I only want them doing that. That's when you'll get the absolute best. And if they've been doing it more than 5 years. You never deal with a business that's been in business 5 years or less. And they generally know what they're doing. And 8 out of 11 businesses go bankrupt within 5 years. So you never want to deal with a newbie. Okay, so anyway, having said that, that's Google Maps. So that's a process. And then you also have to be aware of who gets the most clicks. Well, when there's a list, 43% of the, well, I'll show you here in just a second, but 84% of the clicks will go to the non-pay-per-click, 84%. So that's the majority of the clicks, because they know it's not paid for. It's not advertising. That's why. Okay. 16% will go on the click. Now, in each category, like there's the pay-per-click, and then there's Google Maps and the organic section. 43% of the people will pick the first link in that category. So that's why you not only want to be in the category for that specific word, but now we want to go, well, how can we get to the top of that category? Because that's where all the business is. And so the goal here with the internet marketing is do the industry keyword, number one. Don't chase everything else. I mean, you can, but there's a lot more involved with that, and seeing what works, what doesn't, and all that. You're essentially what you're doing is you're buying a new patient. That's essentially what you're doing. That's a new patient that's Googling chiropractor in Fort Lauderdale. A high probability. It's called an industry keyword. Okay, so you want to make sure you definitely do it for the industry keywords. If you don't do them for anything else, that's fine, but you definitely want to do it for the industry keyword. And then you want to get it to the top, whether it's pay-per-click or whether it's Google Maps or the organic section. And we're going to go into how do you get it on top for each one of those sections. And the reason you want to be on top is what I just said. 43% of the clicks go to the first link. Now, when you click on it, we'll go into what should be next, whether it's pay-per-click. What should they see next? Because there's some things you just don't want them to see. You know, I like in pay-per-click, I see so many times you click on the link and the person just sends them to the homepage of their website. That's like one of the worst things you could do. So what you say after the click becomes real important, whether it's pay-per-click or whether it's Google for Business with your website. When they click on it, your website has to be structured right with the content of the information. Because if it's not saying the right thing fast, you lose them. And it has to be said what's called above the fold. 40% of the people will not even scroll down. So it better be said in plain sight right there. And it better be mobile ready, mobile friendly. So these are all the considerations. that increase the effectiveness of getting these new patients. And then same with SEO. It's the first one. What's the first one? All of them different. What does it take to be number one in SEO? What does it take to be number one in Google Maps? What does it take for that industry keyword? And then what does it take to be number one in pay-per-click? Now, I will cover something really unique and different, and that's odd words and phrases and how to use your competitor's name to get their business. I'm going to cover that separately. That's kind of like a whole different thing because that's not where the business is at. But yeah, you can take business from your competitor by using their keywords. So we'll cover that separately. But that's not the main, you put things in perspective. You want to do it, but that's not like where the gold's at. This is where the gold's at on the internet. It's Google pay-per-click being the first link. It's Google Maps being the first link. It's organic section being the first link. That's where it's at. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I'll just do a screen share here. Let me pull this up. Okay. So this is what we're looking at. So this is what I Googled right here. Chiropractors for Larna. It's real common. So we shared with you the roughly five variations that you want to, those are the keywords you want to use. Okay, so you can see here it says sponsored. Right here it says sponsored at the top. Okay. And then right here you got sponsored. Okay. You got a third spot. Usually it's only 3. Sponsored are usually 3. And then you come down here. These are Google Maps. Now he's actually doing pay-per-click. And what's interesting about pay-per-click is they're going, see, that's what he did. This guy right here is number one in pay-per-click up here. Well, he's also, okay, so he's doing it right. This guy's doing it right here. Actually, I just talked to him last week. And he's number one in the maps. Well, this is the sponsored part of maps. So it's not, which is totally different. Remember, sponsored is pay-per-click. So that's part of Google pay-per-click right there. So that's really good what he did. And then here's the 3. This is typically called the 3-pack. And this one will get the most click. Boy, this is really good right here because this is what's considered the non-pay-per-click area. This is sneaky right here. This is really good sneaky what he did. So you got, remember, only 16% of the people will click in the sponsored section here. Well, it transitioned to maps. And a lot of people won't notice that this is pay-per-click because it went to maps. So this is sneaky smart what he did. Okay, and then here's the organic ones. These are the non-paid ones. Well, this one's going to get the most clicks. So this guy's getting some clicks here. Right? No, he's number one there, and he's number one in the map. And then you come down to the organic section. Okay, so he's not paying attention to the organic section. So this guy, okay, so he's got the name, he's got the good name for Lauderdale Chiropractic. And obviously he's doing a lot of SEO correctly. This is SEO. Okay. For Lauderdale Chiropractic. Okay. So this is SEO. And same with this. This is SEO. SEO. And then all this is too. Remember, when you get down here, it gets to be worthless. This just starts to get to be worthless. You'll have over 80% of the clicks in the first 5 categories. So you'll get 16% here. Number one will get the majority. This is where the majority of the 84% are in the map section. People will click here before they will come down to the organic section. So that gives you a little idea of hierarchy. So if I wanted to go, okay, which one would I want first? Well, the one that I'd want first is maps, because that's the majority. The majority of the people are going to go to the maps. So I'd want to be number one in maps. And then number 2 is I'd go, okay, I'd want to be number 1 in pay-per-click. And then number 3 would be the organic section. Because look how many people they had to pass. They had to pass all this, those 3. They had to pass those 4. This will attract a lot less people. This is the organic section. Now, usually there'll be a video of it. Okay, here's the videos. The videos are coming in now. Okay, and you can see the guy that was in number 1. Here he is, number 3. So this guy's doing it right. He's number 1 in pay-per-click. He's number 1 and he's, even though it's paid in the maps, and he's number 3 in the organic section. That's 1, 2, or number 4. Or let's see, is he number 4? No, so he's number 5. Not bad, even though, but in the 3rd category, which is the worst of the 3 categories, he's number 5. So, but that's what the goal is. So we're going to go into, that's what we're going to do specifically, is go into each of these 3 categories, go, okay, this is how we'll do pay-per-click, and we'll kind of show you how this happened. This is actually relatively new to Google, what's happening here. And then we'll go, what's the organic? So these are definitely the three areas of the internet marketing. Those are the 3 areas of internet marketing you definitely want to participate in. And remember, you don't have to pay for maps. You can do it on your own. You don't have to pay for organic. You just learn it, do it on your own. And when you do pay-per-click, you can limit it. I mean, you could, if you just wanted to do $20 a month, so you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. And then you can narrow it. So you could go for a window and go, I'm only going to spend $50 a month, and I'm going to spend it between 7 in the morning and 10 in the morning on Mondays. So now you can offer a much more higher bid because you're doing a very narrow window, especially when you know when the majority of clicks are happening. And that's what you'll be able to do. You go, well, when are they clicking? Well, if they're clicking, most of them are clicking between 7 and 10 in the morning on a Monday, or that's a disproportionate higher area, then you can just take your $50, move it over there, and significantly outbid everybody. Now, it's not just based on bids, but bidding will be one of the factors. It's based on click-through rate and bids, whether you get the first. So you can't just buy your way to the top, but it will have a significant influence. Let's just say it, put it that way. So that's what that looks like. So that's what we're getting into in great detail, is how to do all these. And that's the relationship and the priority. So in summary, you're going to want to do pay-per-click. We're going to go into that step by step, how you would do it, how you would set it up. I'll literally just go step by step. We're only going to cover those industry keywords. That's all we're going to cover. And then you could limit it to, if you wanted to, $50 a month in a certain time frame, a certain geographic radius, all that stuff. And then same with Google for Business. We'll go, okay, here's all the categories. If you want to see if you're in a really high competitive area, you might, after you see what's involved, you may want to go ahead and apply it for a while and go, okay, you know what, I might want to hire somebody to do that. And then same with the organic. I'll go, okay, here's what's involved with organic. And then also after they click on it, yes, it matters. So getting into position matters first. And then when they click on it, well, what does the video need to say? What does the maps need to say? What should your website say first, second, and third above the fold to have a higher probability of attracting the patient? When they click on the link on a pay-per-click, what should they go to and what should it say to increase the probability? You know, what's like the worst thing you could do is just send them to your home page. That's, it'd be like worthless doing that. So we're going to go into that kind of detail with each of these 3 categories. That's what we're going to do in the next several weeks. All right.